Good evening. I would like to call this meeting of the Neighborhood Improvement Services Advisory Committee to order. I would also like to thank our viewing audience for tuning in. I would like to ask Ms. Paula Jones for our invocation.
Let's pray. We thank you, Lord, for this day that we'll never see again, but this day in particular. We thank you for all you provide for us. We thank you for our life, health, and strength. Now I ask you, Lord, to let us help to offer ideas and help to make good choices for the city of Jacksonville. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone here to this meeting on tonight. We plan to have a great meeting, great input. And remember, our comments, let's keep them to what we're going to focus on tonight so we can keep the viewing audience not entertained, but engaged. At this time, we'll go around the room and we'll introduce each one of the members and any guests if we have any.
Steve Forney, Vice Chair.
Gloria Whitney, member.
Owen Hills, Member.
Pamela Trafton, staff.
Tracy Jackson, staff liaison.
Paula Jones, member.
Marsha Wright, member.
Brian Jackson, City Council Liaison.
Richard Woodruff, City Manager.
Thank you, sir. And my name is Will Smith, the chairman. Okay, has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda? Okay, all right. Is there any changes or additions? Okay, there are no changes. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And so there are no opposition. The motion is carried. Tonight, we have a meeting with our city manager, Dr. Woodruff. We'd like to thank you for coming. And at this time, we'll begin the meeting. Sure.
Well, actually, my understanding from Tracy is that I'm here to listen, that y'all have some ideas. Obviously, as an advisory group, your role is to advise. And I know for Councilmember Jackson's been here, you've advised him, and I'm open to hearing some suggestions. Obviously, that's what you are, an advisory group. So whoever would like to go first, I'm here.
I'd be glad to. I did suggest at the last meeting that we did not have any formal business that needed to be approved or dealt with, that I would like to just see us have a conversation about, well, this department and also just the general issue of housing. I've been on this board since 1986. I became chair in 87 and served in that capacity till 2014. And one reason why I enjoyed serving here was because this was one that we can relate very closely to the population that we serve. I always tell people that if utilities are fine, you don't care about them until you turn on the faucet and nothing happens. You don't care about water and sewer till you flush the toilet and something crazy happens. Things of that nature. But when people come to set up a business or to move here, people from the military come in, because that's how I got here as a military wife, how the place looks and how it seems to look and how engaging it is makes a big impact on how well or how badly you feel about coming to live here. I've seen a lot of changes. We only came here for 4 years back in 1979, and we're still here. And but lately we've had, and I guess it's ongoing, but lately we've had some issues. Everybody knows about the situation with New River and so on, and the housing issues related to that. But I guess my first question was that, or issue was that, as I've been here for this long, I've seen the slow reduction, if that's the way you want to put it, of our allocation and also of our staff. When I came here in the beginning, it was about, would you say 700,000, maybe a little bit better than that, and 4 staff members. We're down to relatively half of that funding and half of that staff. And yet the responsibilities are heavy, because it seems to me that, looking from the outside looking in, that most of the things I think about, when you think about community, sit in their laps because utilities are very clean and clear. Every other department seems to be very clear about what their mission is. This one is the one that captures, in my mind, all of the concerns that a person would have who actually lives here. Housing, schools, of course, we have, the Onslow County schools, so we're not, that concerned about that. But just that kind of an issue. We've taken field trips. I know we took some years ago to comparable cities that are quite honestly bringing in significant funding for what they do in a department like this. Oftentimes they use this allocation for, is it entitlement cities?
Yes, ma'am.
This allocation to leverage much more money. If you get an allocation like we have and someone asked you to put up 10% of $1 million, well, that's about, what, 100,000. That would be part of our allocation. And then, you're looking at leveraging funds because no community can do all of this. You would tax your citizens to death. There's just no way to do it. So, but on the other hand, we had a conversation earlier about census, that there are funds out there. I've gotten tired of talking about the possibility of maybe a partnership between the city and the county I've been talking about since my husband was on the county commission back in '92, to put some money in a pot and hire a professional grant writer, which is what the state does and what many municipalities do. Because grants can come out here. There's no way in the world this staff is going to be able to pursue something like that. They've done it, though, I have to say, quite honestly, they have done it. Don't know how you did it, but they have done it. But when you grow and you're in the situation we're in, major military installation right down the street, you need someone who is professional to write. They can research with those folks, but there's a style and an art to grant writing. Very difficult to do when you got 24/7, 365 wrapped up in this job, and there's just no more time. You can't make any more time. And that has basically gone nowhere, quite honestly. And I said, you have to pay for what you get. And if each one of you put some money in the pot, some travel money, which we don't even need anymore because of the internet and all this technology we have, and get someone who really knows. And I know it works because having led a nonprofit for so long, the department we were under, DHHS, was running millions and millions of dollars a year through there, written by a colleague that I knew, that was her only job, was to research and write and develop grants for that department to work under, because there's no way that we could have done the things that we've done in DHHS without having external money coming in, because there's just no way to satisfy everybody and still do these things. So just, and I guess I would call it kind of out of the box thinking about what we do and how we might be able to do it. The housing issue that we were talking about at the time and getting updates on about the New River situation is just part of a much bigger discussion. There is a housing crisis in this country, well, probably on the planet, but certainly in this country. And it's not going to be solved by entities having their meetings in a room like this and talking about what they can and cannot do. This has to be a wide, comprehensive conversation. And it has to include the people who are going to fund it, which are the citizens. When you have a council meeting or county commission meeting, whatever, 5 minutes on the microphone is not going to get the kind of citizen input you need. You need everybody at the table. You need everybody feeling empowered. Because when you have crises like we have in New River, a lot of the feedback that you've gotten, I cannot imagine, that a lot of it was negative. Why didn't you do? Why didn't this happen? All the wrong questions, all the wrong things that they're concerned about, because they don't feel that they have been heard or any of the needs have been addressed. It's all of this is time consuming, but democracy is a time consuming effort.
Yes, ma'am.
And when people don't have any kind of a voice, it comes out in other ways. It really does. And I had it on my phone a minute ago. I can get it back up. But I got an article from, I can't even tell you where it came from. I just, you know how you sign up for something and they never let you go? And it was talking about why building more housing will not solve the affordable housing crisis. And I thought that was very interesting until I read it, and it made a huge amount of sense. And it makes you look at a community like ours with so many people who work in the service industry. You can build all the affordable housing you want to. They are not going to be able to afford to buy anything on $7.25 an hour. And because of census data, our income issue are skewed because we have a military base close by. And those folk twice a month get a paycheck. They graduate from a low level up to a high level. But everything that I look at and I see about what our median income is and things like that, I'm wondering, who are they talking about? Because I don't know anybody who makes that kind of money in Oswego County. And yet, that's what you base housing on. That's what you base costs on. That's what you base all these issues on. Mm-hmm. So that was why I just kind of felt like I can't remember the last time there was an effort to have some kind of a engaging conversation about housing, about where we like to go, what direction we want to take. I know council has some issues, the commissioners have, and one reason I talk about both all the time, to me, that's the boundaries between the two are irrelevant to the people who live here. I live in the city, I'm a city resident, I'm also a county resident. So you can't make those divisions. It's like they make them because they're political, but they don't make any sense in terms of how people have to live and how they pay for what they have and where they live, all this kind of thing. And so just having a conversation about it, and like I said, I know what we're charged with doing here, but people know us and they see us and they know that we have some kind of relationship with the city. And so when you have people who come and ask you, that's why they're asking you.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, I can't answer the questions, but they know that's why we're here. They see us on the show that comes on, but they know many of us have been on this committee for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And they ask questions and they expect some kind of an answer. And it can be hard to talk to people about, those kinds of questions. I'm the board chair for our local community action agency. And I mean, when we got the call from HUD in DC, wanted to know what is going on down there in your city. Somebody I've never heard of before called because he saw it on the social media and on CNN or wherever. I was wondering kind of, how did you find out? I should have known, how did you find out? But this is what you have to contend with. And I'm board chair of that agency, and he expected me to be able to answer that question.
Yes, ma'am.
And so it's very, very complex. But the old saying about each journey starting with one step is absolutely true. And if you can get the buy-in and the commitment from the people you serve, the people who pay the money it takes to run the place, and they feel pretty good about how you're handling things and going where you're going, it just does make a difference. I remember one thing, and then I'll stop. I remember when we were doing the trying to renovate downtown, and I was on this committee, and people were coming for asking money and so forth, and then for allocating funds and so forth. And my question was continually, can you show me a picture, a drawing, a mock-up? Can you show me anything about what you anticipate this looking like when you finish spending this money? No. I remember what we got out of it, as I recall, was a big sign out on Gum Branch Road, that there was a company that had been hired to look at the redevelopment of downtown. They spelled that development wrong on the sign, which really sent me into orbit because I come from old school where spelling is no. And I said, we paid these people $100,000 and they misspelled something on a big, huge sign.
You
I
talking
was
about
so
the
through.
downtown master plan?
And yes, I was so through. But those are the kind of things that just get you. So that was my thought about just having a conversation about what we were talking about this program in particular, and also about the general issue of community.
And we've done so well at infill projects. I mean, not large scale. I'm talking about taking a dilapidated structure here and then rebuilding or partnership building. But I don't think that's to the scale that's really needed anymore. the last major construction was Phoenix, as far as, you know, affordable housing. And we had quite a bit of infill that was semi-given to us on Huff Road when we provided the infrastructure using CD funds.
I have
for
to
building
correct that. We have had 9 projects through different developers. And I'm doing a analysis on that. And I can tell you that we have spent since 2001, which was Phoenix, up until this year with CDBG funded projects, $1.6 million and over 400 units.
Right,
So
that is substantial.
that is very substantial about what we have done in the past and what we have done currently. CDBG funds have been leveraged and have been used to bring affordable housing in this area. So I will say that I do know that we have had at least 9 from one developer and another one from one more developer. And we've also had some funding, we also had some projects that have developed that were not funded by CDBG funds. We just didn't have enough in our budget to cover it, but they still were built and they still, you know, are here in helping our community. So we've done some big projects, not just infield construction. We've done some bigger projects as far as affordable housing.
Question. In the past projects that you've done, how was it decided the percentage of affordable homes that was gonna be in a particular project?
Usually we only get maybe 1 or 2 developers that come in and apply for our funding. So you may have a project proposal that's submitted that may have at least 15%, 0 to 30% low mod benefit, or you may have 25%. It all depends on the unit, the size of the project, and what the developer could afford. So it all depends. And it gets reviewed by the review committee. You know, they have to go through the application process. And then it has to also be approved by city council with our budget.
During the process of the Huff redevelopment and all that, that was an actual sit-down between the construction company's representatives and April Pender and, you know, folks working on that board at the time.
Yeah, as a result, it was 14 units that was developed as for that connection. It was a Huff Road connection. And they also had some land throughout there. So they did develop some property out in that connection, in that project.
Let me address a couple of things that Ms. Wright mentioned. I've been here 12 years. First of all, the misspelled word was before my 12 years.
It was. Yes, it was.
I know that.
Because believe me, I go to bed every night and wake up every morning with an English teacher. And I'm gonna tell you, when we watch pro football and we listen to some of the commentators talk about their version of the English language, my wife no longer talks about whether the Patriots are winning or whether the Bucks are winning. She talks about grammar.
God, no.
Okay. But let's go back. If my memory is generally correct, 12 years ago, the entitlement that we received from the federal government was about $700,000. Today, it is less than $350,000. Now, the city council has, and you may not realize this, the city council has picked up almost all of that void. For example, when I came here, every employee was paid out of the CD fund. Today, only 1/6 of one person is paid out of the CD fund. Why? Because we're trying to keep as much of the CD of the roughly 350,000 that we get for programs. You know, so it's like everything in life. It comes down to money. The city council over the years has incrementally moved part of Pam's salary and all of Tracy's salary and all of Lily's salary when she was here over to the general fund. It's
Yeah,
being
I
paid by the taxpayer.
Mhm.
So when you look at the program, yes, it's easy to say, well, it used to be $700,000, today it's only $350,000. No, it's not. It's today about $650,000 because Mr. Jackson and his counterparts have taken general tax money from Jacksonville, from each of us who pay taxes, and have supplemented that. And we have moved the employees from the CD money, the entitlement money, so that more of that money is available. The other thing to also remember is we've now, as a city, tried to make the housing issue a city-wide, every department. When I came here 12 years ago, if CD wanted something, they had to pay for it. Do you know who tears down the houses now? It's Mr. Jackson. And I actually saw him in an excavator 2 weeks ago. But guess who that excavator belongs to? CD? No. Belongs to the street department. Guess who all the employees are who actually tear those houses down and take them away? Streets department. Guess who pays for that? The regular taxpayer. You know, I think it's important to remember that one of the things that I'm very proud of that we've accomplished in the 12 years I've been here is we've quit having National Night Out be a police function. It's now a city function. We've quit having CD be a CD function. It's now a city function. Now, there's no question that that approach has been successful. I mean, we tore down our 150th vacant and dilapidated house the other day. And you did a pretty good job, except you didn't quite finish before you went to lunch. That's all I can say. But I just want to make sure you understand from a financial standpoint. The other thing is the city council has said that approaching housing and approaching neighborhood improvements, you have to do that from, obviously, like you said, Ms. Wright, multifaceted. What they've asked us to do is step up code enforcement. Code enforcement occurs in every neighborhood, but guess where it really occurs? In a lot of the low-income neighborhoods. And so what we did when Lily left us is we took that position and we did not keep it in CD. We put it in code enforcement. But guess who's over code enforcement? Young lady sitting at the end of the table. Code enforcement was under Lily. Code enforcement is under Tracy. But what we did was to take that position. We didn't eliminate it or send it to some other department. What we did is we reassigned it to a priority that the city council told us and that we all agreed with. Is the key is to keep places from becoming slums. It's just the same as our road paving. We concentrate on our failing roads, not our failed roads. Because you'll never have enough money to pave your failed roads. You've got to catch them before they fail. Same thing with housing. Our goal is to make sure that neighborhoods don't fail, that neighborhoods don't become slums. So again, you know, if you look at it from one perspective, yeah, there's not as much money. If you look at it from the other perspective, there is. If you look at it from the perspective of, well, we've cut down the number of employees. Well, on one hand we have, the other hand we haven't. The most important thing, though, is that we're now having 580 employees engaged in trying to build the very best communities, whether it's through code enforcement, whether it's through CD, whether it's through police, whether it's through the building department. You know, because you are right. This is very complex. But I'll also tell you, it is also life. What do I mean by that? Just as I am no longer 16 years old, although on this side of my eyes I am, but when Paula walks her dog recognizes me as a fairly old guy. Well, the same thing happens in communities. Things phase out. And what you have to have is like a tunnel with cars. Those cars that need to be taken out of the tunnel, you need to get rid of them. And that's what we've been doing with code enforcement and with tearing down houses. But you got to open up space so new cars can get in. And that's why we set up the public-private partnership for building new houses. One of the frustrating things about building new houses, though, is the 520 rule. Does anybody know what the 520 rule is?
You're gonna tell us, right?
Pardon me?
Yeah.
You're gonna tell us, right?
No?
Just in case we
Tracy's
don't know
gonna tell us.
somebody.
Tracy, what's the 520 rule?
I am not familiar
It
with
is your credit score.
Okay, yeah, right.
It's your
Yeah.
credit score. We have people that come to our classes every couple of months that Pam does a great job educating them on how to become a homeowner. The problem is they can't get a loan because even through the federal programs, you gotta have a 520 credit score. Now, if you go to a local bank and have a 520 credit score, they're gonna laugh you out of the bank.
Right.
You gotta have over 600.
That's right.
You're right, this is complex.
Mhm.
And it's good to be having conversations about it. And, you know, this is not the first conversation. Believe me, we around the city council and around the staff, there've been a lot of conversations for many, many years. But I wanted to at least
Oh, yes, and
address some of those
that's
things
extremely
so
helpful to me, but once again, like you said, it's so complex. I mean, you know, when you're talking about how you can get this, because the point that you make about credit score is very well taken. And so I remember the days, going back to the 50s, when I was in school, yes, that O.W. Holmes Elementary School started in 1956. We had banking in the school. We had Cleveland Trust, who came to school every first Friday. Everybody had to have a savings account.
Right.
If you were sitting in there in a chair, and when I tell you that at any given time, because I'm a baby boomer, it was 36 to 40 of us in every room. I went to school for half a day for 2 years because there wasn't enough room for all of us to go at the same time. So I was on the 12:30 to 3:30 shift. And I had class neighbors who were on the 9:30 or 8:30 to 11:30 shift. But they did banking. They came to the school. You had to put something in the bank. It didn't matter if it was 25 cents, a nickel, or a penny. All of us had to bank. And each one of us had to be the assistant teller, because the teller was the person who came to the school. And they stood there, and we did the teller activity that you do in a bank. That sharpened our math skills, gave each one of us a chance to do all this. You put the money in the bank, then you compute. They gave us at least a penny of interest every time. You added the interest. Those are the things that build people with a middle class mentality, whether they have the money or not. That's how you build that. That has gone completely away. I called a couple of banks in town a few years ago asking why we couldn't do that. And they had every reason in the world why they could not do that. And I was trying to figure out, well, I did it in 1956. I don't understand why in 20-something, 2010 or whatever it was. What is the issue? Well, I heard it was security. I heard every number of reasons. Once again, they're a complex issue because you can't keep having generations of young people growing up in a situation where credit and jobs and financial information they don't have it. And when I talk about being born into segregation, and I got that before I left O.W. Holmes Elementary School, that you cannot do that now if you engage people the right way, because you can't keep waiting for the 18-year-old or the 38-year-old to wake up to the fact that that's why I can't get a house. You know, you grow them. That's how you do that. And that's not the city's issue or responsibility. But it's but if you don't get the school system and the bank system and the business community in the conversation, we won't be talking about, I'm sitting here talking to less than 10 people right now. Bank of America, you know, the banks in this community, PNC has a great program on youth children and for young people, because I've seen them roll it out. So do some of the credit unions. But once again, when you don't have some kind of way of communicating this comprehensive conversation and asking them to explain why you can't do this or explain what could happen to get us to do this, that's when you get the 5-year-old who in their 25, their credit is straight, their banking is straight, they know what they have to do, and then go out here and buy a house. You got generational poverty in the midst of wealth.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I make a suggestion? Like you said, we got ongoing conversations concerning this. Maybe we should look at trying to see what we can do with our community partners, more so on that side, and have a further conversation going back to the economic mobility piece, you know, so.
Which is crucial to everybody.
Right.
That economic
Every-
mobility.
You know, after our last meeting in here, we had a couple of people that actually lived in over in the New River area. And they were very instrumental in some information that they got and some information that we learned. And so one of the things that I was thinking about as we go forward is more community input sessions where we actually get out, bring them in so we can actually hear boots on the ground, what's going on. We can pass it to the city council, to all of, so they understand what's going on in their jurisdictions,
Right.
so we can really begin to get ahead of a lot of issues. Because if we all remember, we went out a couple of years ago and actually walked through New River, and we kind of seen it coming, but nobody said anything. Remember when we went out in the river and we said, okay, we said something, but it just wasn't taken into consideration, about the different places and how the housing conditions were. Which leads me to my next thing, and I think you said that it's based, our median income is based on the base, goes by what the base income is. Well, that would be another issue with affordable housing. Because as a PFC, you're still gonna get about $1,000 in BAH just for your house. Nobody out here making $750 an hour. So, and it could be just me not knowing. We call it affordable, but it's still out of range to people who can't afford it. So those are things we gotta really see what's going on and see if we can get with our community partners to make sure that, hey, listen, these guys can't afford this, because everybody can't live in a specific place. And I think the guy that we had last time, he found a house and he said it, on air, but he couldn't afford it. Even if the COVID-19 hadn't been here and we had money to help him pay his down payment and help him pay a couple months, if this just been regular everyday living, where was he going to go? And so it's something that we got to think about, and we get that through our community input. And also I had put down here our city council, maybe group thinks away from the board.
Say that again.
Group thinks where we come, most of the time we see them on there and it's go time. But what we call it is a meeting before the meeting. Kind of like, we'll come up and see you before the meeting, let's talk this out. So when we get in front of, the rest of the council, the rest of the people who we're serving, we have good ideas that can be executable.
Let me ask you, one suggestion, what you think about the council maybe meeting with this body? But I do get what you said.
Well, I brought that up a couple meetings ago, to meet not only, with this body first, so we can kind of begin to see who we're serving with.
We need what about a town hall type of format?
Well, those community, we can put a town hall, all right, but before we get to that town hall, we have to have these community input sessions so we can prioritize what we want to execute. Because I think when you put too much on the plate, we're trying to execute on everything instead of prioritizing what we do need to. Because I'm sure each council member has something on their mind that they got to get off that they're worried about in every other committee also. But we have to prioritize it.
And you got to start, like you said, it goes back. If you got issues in the community, you got to start with the people in that community.
Okay, and these are just thoughts that I had, right? Neither here nor there. But if we are beginning to have a population, and I don't want to call it homelessness, but possible homelessness, crime activity will go up. And so now, our police department, they go into full action and they go overworked also. So I think one thing can help another, but in this, we got to think about it all and really bring feasible ideas, to each other, to the Dr. Woodruff, to our city council members, so we can get something done. you know, because and my heart was was really crushed when we had a citizen here, you know, who's working hard every single day, and he got kids and a wife, and he said, I just can't do it alone, you know, and it's only so much help we can do. And so that brings us to the part what Ms. Marshall was talking about, you know, her learning. We got all of the, and I can speak personally because, help me out, it was about 9 people during COVID-19 who bought houses from our organization, about 9 people who had bad credit. They went through the classes. I talked to a lady out, I think she was over near Belfort Road or something. I talked to her for about 15 minutes, told her about the home buying program. 1 year later, she pulled the trigger and bought a house. So we have to get more advertising in there. And I know we put it in the water bill. You know, I know that's your biggest one. But we got to figure out a way to engage our community at large, whether it's word of mouth, newspaper, however it can be, because we got stuff in place to help people.
Yeah.
You know,
But in many cases, much like we brought up with the credit and many others, that almost needs to be started in middle school.
okay. Now I got that right. Okay.
You know.
I'm originally from Houston, Texas, right? Can't get no. Where I grew up, couldn't get no worse than that. And I was taught everything that you just said.
Yeah.
Right. I actually graduated high school early because I went to an early high school education program, but I just sat in class the rest of the time. You know. But the thing about it is, once again, we can do all of that, but unless we have an executable plan, you know,
True.
Because it's one thing to have a lot of information out there and then we even go above and beyond to make it. Then you got to help them execute the plan, and that's what brings Jacksonville together, a caring community, right? That's what each and every one of us. That's why we volunteer for these boards and we do all of these things. So unless we get the right community input, because everyone has input, but I'm talking about the right community input, that the majority of the people are gonna say, I can back that. Because I know I don't need a 520 credit score, and I can come to these classes for minimal charge or no charge at all. And we've had these classes all over the city. You didn't even have to come to some of them. You can go to your local churches, you know? And, I tell you what, if people want this information and we have to do it, I will pay for it myself for them to bring it out to those places to get it to them. That's how committed I am to getting them that information.
Well, let me mention just a second. One of the reasons why we actually have a fee is because we want people to have buy-in from the beginning.
Absolutely.
What is it now, $25?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You know, I know $25, well, I'm just gonna show you how that's. You see this $20 bill?
Yeah,
Every Monday,
But they
every Monday, my wife gives me my allowance,
$20.
$20. I'm serious. I get an allowance. I mean, my wife learned a long time ago, don't let that young man have the checkbook. She gives me $20. And I have to live with that $20. Now, today's only Monday. Come along Thursday, I'm not sure how much of this $20 is gonna be left.
I got you.
The point I'm making though is this, we could make those classes free. And I've talked to Pam, and I've talked to Tracy about making those classes free. And the comment came back, free is not good.
No, it's never good.
If a person gets something free, they do not value it.
Exactly.
But if they put in $25 or $10, whatever, if they put in some of their hard-earned money, then maybe they'll attend those classes. But that is the reason why we actually charge a fee. You may be sitting there and say, well, why doesn't the city just make it free? Sure, we could.
No, I wasn't talking about the free like that. I'm talking about for the locations. I'll pay for those. Because, I mean, it's you have to have buy-in, right?
You have to have skin in the game, as they say.
And also you have to have a great mindset shift of where
Yes.
people are right now.
Let me say this right quick.
Yeah.
Going back to what I said about economic mobility, that's that conversation all the way around. Because you'll find out, now you assess what you have, you'll get your partners to the table, and then like you say, you start having these input meetings, but that's all gonna go back to economic mobility. So that's gonna be a larger meeting, and we gotta figure out the process.
I am glad to hear that kind of language being spoken. In this setting, economic mobility is very important as far as HUD is concerned. So it is good to hear, but we also have to recognize that other agencies, housing providers, other developers, and all of it, the holistic part of affordable housing has to embrace the concept of economic mobility.
I don't think it's a hard sell. We come up with some kind of a euphemism for it every time. Every generation has something to call what they're talking about. But it really boils down to, at least to me, because I was in high school when the War on Poverty legislation was signed by LBJ. Again, that dates me. But the point I'm trying to make is that I know when these programs didn't exist. And people had, I asked somebody younger than me the other day we were talking about rent parties. And she didn't know what I was talking about. And I said, you never heard of a rent party? And she said, no, and she didn't have an idea what I was talking about. And I explained it to her that was what folks in a community did when they had a friend or a neighbor who couldn't pay the rent for this much. They were short on the rent. I got mine, but you need $25, $50. Got together, had a party, you made sandwiches, and you cut them diagonally and charged 50 cents for each sandwich. You had a soda that you charged 25 cents, whatever. And they danced, and they had music, and you had a good time, and the kids were in the room, calling themselves asleep or whatever. The point is, at the end of the night, whoever the rent party was for took all the proceeds from that event. And they were able to come up with, or at least it was toward what they owed. And next month, it was your turn to have the rent party for you. And that was what community people did, because there wasn't any Section 8 housing program. There wasn't any of the stuff that people take for granted and think have always been here. That didn't exist until 65. I was getting ready to go into high school at that point. So I knew how it was to grow up with none of these safety nets going on. And then to have them come in and understand why they were created initially, and then to fast forward 55 years later and look at what's going on around us, it's concerning. Because, once again, there's no free lunch. Somebody's got to pay for it. What have we done to our young people and the people we have raised to make them believe that there's some kind of entitlement going on here, that I'm owed because I'm breathing and happen to be here? And I've never lived anyplace else. Those of you in the military, you all have lived all over the world. I have not. But as difficult as it has been for some of us here and a lot of us here, I'm still going to buy into the notion that at least you got a chance. Because there are places where, forget about it. At least you got an opportunity to try to do something if you are willing to because they kept telling us in school all the time, you got to work for it. You got to, whatever you want to, and whatever you have, you got to work for it. That was a mantra that I was raised on before you had safety net programs. I'd be the first person. I spent 35 years of my professional life in safety net programs because I believe in you helping your neighbor. Because no matter where you live, you can live in California, you're still my neighbor when it comes to this situation in Kentucky. You're still our neighbors when this stuff comes up. But we've been fractured, not just by COVID, because COVID hasn't really done anything, in my opinion, but reveal and pull the veil back on what's been going on for a long, long time. And I used to say struggle builds character. And I have changed that because I heard on TV the struggle doesn't build character, struggle reveals character. And so you have people who are interested in doing, they need help just discovering how to do it. And they will hold your hand and you hold their hand and have them walk you through this process, and you end up with a homeowner who adds to the local economy, economic mobility. But I'm scared that the safety net programs are not going to continue because the young people who have come up, I think about my children, are no longer willing to pay for your situation when they got their own burdens. And they grew up helping me set up tables. You've seen my kids out here setting up tables and handing out literature and blah, 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 this and that and the other. And I've had some hard conversations with them over the past COVID couple of years. And they have shown me and told me that they're willing to do anything with anybody. But you got to be in this with me. And their notion of this is different than I thought it would be, but it is what it is.
Yes, ma'am.
So I guess my whole venture with this was to try to have, because the conversation we're having, I think is wonderful, because it allows people who have not necessarily agreeing with everything, but like-mindedness in terms of I'm here to serve the community in whatever
Yes, ma'am.
way I've got to do it, you're willing to serve. So-
Now, do you mind if we just start going around the room and see if
You
we
can
get
go
some
ahead.
input?
You know what I want to
Oh,
do?
no, ladies always go first, Gloria.
Let me bring, let me
He
bring.
doesn't eat chocolate chip cookies anymore.
Okay.
I mean, come on now.
But I was just gonna say too about, our main problem is, and I had mentioned it to you at the meeting at Oak Grove, but I didn't have my minutes, so I always write, you see me writing. But my main problem is Facebook, texting, phone calls, scam. I myself don't do that. And like I was saying, word of mouth, if you can't pick up the phone and call me, and I recognize your voice or your name, then I don't talk to you. Cause I had almost 70 calls on my phone when I got back on my answer machine. I couldn't even answer them all. 168 emails. I just don't have the time to sit there and do that. And most of them are people, I don't know, Walmart, everywhere you went, they call you. But anyway, back to the problem of, when we went down to the meeting, and a lot of people didn't know. And I'm trying to say that we put it in the water bill, that's one good way. I was telling my neighbors that, to look for it that way. We got new people coming in. I have 3 moved in beside me off Henderson Extension. And they don't know when to take in the garbage can, and they don't know. But what I'm saying is, if we have flyers, old-timey flyers, like when you go to Walmart and they put them on your cars. I know they're not supposed to, but they do anyway. I will come down to City Hall, pick them up, and take them and pass them out to my neighbors. So that, like one lady told me, she said, well, I just don't know what's going on. I'm new here. And she felt bad. She said, I want to get involved, but I don't know what to do. And I don't know what to tell her, I said, because I don't know what board she would fit in on. But if she knew what was happening around the city, she could figure that out for herself. So that's one thing about, and I said, all these churches in Jacksonville, a church on every corner, they could have a flyer for all these people. There's a lot of holy people in Jacksonville. I mean, I'm not cutting anybody down, but I'm saying, even including our church, there's a lot of self-holy people that can pick up a flyer, because I have taken them and put them in our church in the vestibule. And I tell people when they walk in, I walk out of the kitchen, go into the vestibule, and say, pick up a flyer, find out what's going on. I took the ones you had the other night. And they say, oh, thank you. Because they don't know. They come to a funeral, I tell them, pick up a flyer. I'm out there selling flyers at the funeral. That's the way they get to know. I'm serious. That's how we knew about, things that were happening when we got here, Marcia and I, when we was on beautification over there. And I'm saying, we still need to go back and have a meeting with beautification. Sometimes we meet with certain persons out of the boards that we have. Brainstorm of what part of the city they working with. Sanitation, what are they doing out there? By the way, the commons look beautiful at night. It's gorgeous. I got a call sanitation.
You're welcome.
And I'm serious. But anyway, we got to brainstorm together, like I was telling him. And during brainstorming before the meeting, we come up with something that we all can agree on, and don't take up a whole meeting discussing the problem at the meeting. And then we can go back and tell our citizens things that are workable for them. I'll get you a flyer so you'll know. And like I told her, I said, I'll pick up the flyer. I'm by here every day going over to someplace. Pick up a flyer, take it to my neighbor. I'll be glad to pass them out. I don't want to go to people's houses that I don't know. But if you ask me for one, I'll go and, give them to. A lot of them ask you if you talk to them. So that's the only thing I have to say.
Yes, sir.
Look, can I make a quick suggestion? I'm gonna go back to something that we did as a council. I was late, but we did it as a council. Dr. Woodruff asked us to provide information through an email about the ideas that we thought we needed to bring to the table. And then could start with, if there's similar, ideas coming up with one person, we'll attack that first. But that might be one way. We might need to look at a facilitated workshop. Like you said, a brainstorming workshop. But I would start possibly, and I know the time's getting late, where we can actually, as a body here, we could send information either to Pam, about, some of the ideas we want to present here. Because
Okay.
and then we could start attacking it one by one.
How about we do this, like for our first meeting of next year, we start sending out emails so we can rack and stack all these ideas, prioritize them. And our first meeting be sort of like this, so we have them, we go through them, prioritize them, then we can launch from there. How about that?
Well, I will say
Now-
that we are in our planning process for our annual action plan. And I would love to get that kind of input from you all to tell us, how we should, formulate our survey. Of course, it has to coincide with our 5-year plan, but also to start thinking about next year, because our 5-year planning process starts next year. So that kind of input, that's what I would love to get from this committee.
Now, I think,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to hear from Owen, and
Yes,
one of the
ma'am.
reasons why is when I know,
He's young.
The young, he
Yes.
knows what's going on.
and I will tell you, today, I had to get something accomplished. I got up this morning and I was walking in my head as to how I was gonna do this. And by the time I got through, it was going to be all day long, I was gonna have to do to achieve this. I walked into a place where I had to sign some documents. Young lady was there. I told her what I needed. Do you know she had me straight in less than 5 minutes? And I'm still sitting here trying to figure out how all of that happened. All I know is I kept telling her, girl, you don't know how thankful I am. Oh my God. And it was just about her viewpoint. So I've gotten my head wrapped around the fact that us baby boomers, we did our thing, all the rest of us, we don't have to turn this over. And I need for you to, if you had submit what you think about all that you've heard and how you think we could achieve it using 2021 instead of 1965 ways of doing it.
No pressure. So a couple things that I thought about, like I feel like my starting point from this is like recognizing that we're talking about solutions at the city level, right? Like we're not even really talking about county level. So like I super agree with a lot of like, for instance, the educational things that people are saying. It's a county problem though, right? A lot of the funding stuff is like state and federal, right? And so those aren't necessarily things that Dr. Woodruff and Mr. Brian Jackson can do. I never know, do I call you Mr.? Do I call you Brian? You know what I mean? It's always weird in public. So one of the things that the city controls though is zoning, right? And so maybe an actionable thing that the city could do is we could either like loosen up single family zoning restrictions. That would allow more like multifamily, more places where multifamily units, duplexes, quadplexes, things like that could be built. You can't build those in single family houses, right? And as a side note, this is not something the city can do, but we as people, right, we all kind of need to let go of the suburban single family vision, right? Like the reality is that like if you want to house all of the people, you're gonna like not everyone's gonna get like a detached single family house, and not everybody wants that. One of my biggest complaints here in Jacksonville has always been there is no housing for single people. If you're a single person in Jacksonville, there is no cheap studio apartment where you can just like, you know what I mean, put an air mattress so you have somewhere to, you know what I mean? You have to like live with your family, get a girlfriend, something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's true, it's true.
Absolutely true.
So
That's absolutely
if
true.
the city controls zoning, so one thing that maybe could be done is that some zoning could either be loosened up in terms of things that are already zoned for single family. And I don't know if this is a real thing. I think maybe Mr. Forney, you would know more about this, but if there was some kind of particular zoning that could be set aside for affordable, not just multifamily housing, because an expensive duplex is still an expensive housing, right? So if we could set aside some zoning for actual affordable housing, in addition to loosening up some of the single-family restrictions, that's something perhaps the city could do. Another thing that I'm not quite sure what the status of is the zoning rules on accessory dwellings and trailers, right? An accessory dwelling is like, let's say you have a mother-in-law suite, right, which is like basically a very large, nice shed that has electricity and plumbing in your backyard.
You're gonna put your mother-in-law there. I can tell you're not.
My mother-in-law lives in an actual house, an actual room in my house. She's a very sweet lady. She keeps to herself, and it works out.
And
But there are some
in terms
places-
of trailer units, in terms of trailer units, that's gonna have to be, the way it is now, okay? We're proposing to city council that they approve a certain type of zone for that. But that would be up to a developer to come in and build the platform necessary, but at that, it's not infill. In fact, right now,
Can you define? I don't know that term.
okay,
Infill.
if you were to drive around Georgetown or some places in Jacksonville, you will see where there is an old single-family trailer or single-wide trailer. Once that trailer has been disposed of, another trailer cannot be brought into that
Correct,
site. It has to be a house. So, and the only area in Jacksonville proper is Holiday
City.
City. Mobile Home, right now.
Why is that?
That's not true.
Well,
There's some other ones, but
Well, in certain areas, but.
the one that comes to mind is Morton Trailer Park Home, which is on the intersection of Gum Branch and 17 South.
Over there by Burger King.
Over there by Burger King, yeah. That it's not a great place to live. My mother used to live there, but yeah, if you go back there,
Is that back by
But those are
Phillips?
old mobile homes, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just saying they are out there,
Oh, but I don't think they're occupied.
oh, they are.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't say they should be, but they are.
All right, okay.
Kick that ass.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was my confusion, because I know that, like, I know there are wheels moving on that, but I super support that. I think that, again, the point that I'm making there is the fact of the matter is not everybody's gonna get a brick and mortar foundation house, right? So we gotta think creatively about ways to allow all kinds of homeless people, again, not just homeless families, but homeless single people, homeless people with pets, homeless people with transportational issues, things like that. We have to find creative ways to allow for developers to develop those kinds of homes. You know, like you said, yeah, it's up to a developer to build that once the allowance is created, but the allowance isn't there, and it can't be done. Another thing that I wonder if we could do, a couple other things that came to mind is, like, can we think about, are there some, nobody likes to use the tax word, but, like, are there some, like, relatively normal taxes that comparable cities use that we do not use, right? That might fill in some of these gaps. I don't really get that impression of Jacksonville. I feel like the city doesn't, but, like, there are some places that have these, like, weird, like South Carolina, for instance, like, they're very anti-tax, and so they have much lower revenue for things like their roads because they just refuse to tax people, right? And so I know people don't like to, like, think about raising taxes or levying new taxes, but if there are some normal things that places like Wilmington or Fayetteville that normal cities do that we just for whatever reason don't, maybe that's a thing we can look at. Did you guys hear me?
No, he's just.
Oh, sorry. The last thing that
I
comes
will mention, when you talk about taxes, each state, you know, because we're a federalist system, you know, we all say it's a democracy. It's not actually a democracy, it's federalism. There are certain things, such as taxation at the local level, that are determined by each state. And the state of North Carolina, they have dealt the city council not even a $20 hand, it's a $1 hand. They have basically said, cities, you don't have any ability to have a gas tax, to pave your roads. You don't have any ability to do this, this, and this. All you have is what? Property tax and whatever we as a state decide to give you with gas tax. And whatever we as a state decide is your portion of the sales tax. Now, yes, we can have a user fee, such as we're having a class charging $25. That doesn't get you real money. A state like Florida, and that's where I'm from, you have what are called charter cities. The state law allows each city to decide what they are going to be responsible for. So for example, in Florida, you can have a referendum on your own without asking the state legislature. We are going to ask the taxpayers, are you in favor of adding 2 cents to the gas tax so we can pave roads for the next 5 years? In this state, we can't do that. We all know our roads are in terrible shape here in the city. But at the same time, okay, where's the money gonna come from? Same thing with housing. In Florida, you can have a local referendum that says, are you willing to add to your property tax or to your sales tax X dollars so we can do the following things for affordable housing? This state you can. Why? Different state laws. But keep going, you're rolling real well.
And once again, because eventually, you all will make this decision. Because the people who have made these decisions will be gone. So if you feel like a system should be in place to allow what you've talked about right now, eventually, just by the passage of time, that, the reason they're in place is because someone decided, heaven only knows how long ago, not to do that. Just like the situation I talked about with the bank. It wasn't any logical reason they could give me why they didn't do it. They just didn't do it, because they hadn't thought about it or the regulations or whatever. So I'm just saying to you that as you're part of this group here, I like having that energy and that thought process, because one thing I do say that's different from the way I was brought up to think is the global good stuff is the way I was brought up to think about the world around me, because there were just so many changes that needed to be made and so forth and so on. You, on the other hand, you do exactly what my daughter and son do. Cut to the chase. How are we going to do it? If I can't tell them in 5 words or less how we're going to do it, then they don't want to talk to me anymore about it. And they're not trying to be rude. It's just that, and I don't know if I got that into them or somebody else did, but it must be all of them, because that's the way they are. If you can't tell me how you're going to do this, they want to go on to another conversation. And the what we're doing right now, like this right here, I can promise you, Jonathan and Desiree are not going to do this. They're not going to sit in this room and talk about anything for as long as we have talked about this. And that's really only been about 60 minutes. They are not going to do this. So in addition to whatever ideas you have, you need to tell us about better ways to communicate. A flyer is wonderful. These kids look at you like you have lost your entire mind when you talk about printing up, typing, and going and handing anybody anything. And I stopped doing it only because we paid so much money for stuff like that. And then at the end of National Night Out, it was all on the ground outside for somebody to pick up and throw in the trash. And that was money was gone. So as you talk about these, and I'm hearing what you say, and I had not even thought about there's no housing for single people here. You're absolutely right. Not unless you can get a relationship with somebody who does have a house.
Yeah.
And figure that out. But
Ms. Paula,
once again, as you're talking about just ways to do it and ways to get us willing to talk about that.
Ms. Paula?
And as Owen was speaking, I had written down some notes earlier, and one of them was, what does an affordable house actually look like? In California has this, they started sending flyers. Most of you guys know my mom passed a few months ago, and back in July, and so me and my brother have been dealing with being Well, I've been dealing with kind of being a homeowner, and it's different. It's very different. My aunt tells me that all the time, and one of the things we own and rent a home in California, and they get a lot of information from California about turning a garage space into a house for a place to live for a single person. They're called AD something, ADMs,
ADUs, accessory dwelling units.
There you go. And they keep sending these papers, and I started throwing them away at first, and then I started looking at them, and they made perfect sense to turn. There are people who do live here in Jacksonville, over in New River, where we started out talking about that area. They're not going to be able to afford a house, a great big space, but yet they could afford, very possibly afford, a space that's that size. It's not a trailer. It's not a 5-bedroom house or a 3-bedroom house or even 2-bedroom house, but yet it has everything that a single person, as you say, and I'm a single person too, would need to function. It's not a great big giant place.
But you're also not on the street.
There you go.
You know?
You're not on the street.
I asked a
Not on the
question one
street.
time
I mean,
about Section
there
8
are
vouchers.
places.
I'm sorry.
About Section 8 vouchers, somebody said to me, could boarders use, because the boarding system is old, very old as people are. And for a long time, people, I understand that because Georgetown was the only black high school in the area, you had kids who came in here from New Bern and various areas around, and they boarded with a family here in Jacksonville for, say, Monday through Friday morning, and they went home on the weekend, came back, and got picked up or however they did it.
The teachers was.
Or the teachers
Teachers,
are boarders,
yeah.
teachers boarders.
Yeah.
And they pay the owner, I presume, a certain amount of rent. Well, then my question was, well, if you had a voucher of some kind or assistance of some kind, and you found a place where I've got a second floor to the house I'm in, I need some help paying or whatever. If I brought a boarder in, could that person use that voucher? And I think they told me no, because I don't even know the reason why. I kind of think I know what it was, because it's like, this is how we've structured this, and this is how we think about doing this. And what you're talking about is something different. We don't want to do that. But it was a way of getting a person off the street. It was a way of getting a person to be able to contribute to that dwelling's bills and have a place to stay. But they're not related necessarily or part of the same household. They're boarding. Like people used to do since the beginning of time.
Right.
And yet the system that supports, the limited system that supports housing for anybody is right now not open to doing that. They're open to only, you got a house over there, I come and live in your place and I pay you and then you pay the standardized thing. And they're not even hearing about the huge numbers, and I hadn't even thought about this, living here all this time, and it just never even thought about the young person, because I just figured somebody went out and got an apartment, stayed there. I didn't know how in the world you paid for it, but all that was the only way I thought, you did it. So what you're saying really brings some things out that,
This one. Go ahead.
But Marcia, nowadays, it's not into big houses anymore, because like my house, with Corey going and graduated from high school last year, I don't need a 4-bedroom house with a garage and all of that, because it's downsizing. People now don't need, 6 bathrooms and all of that. Small houses, what they call tiny houses now, are the main thing. And you can make them as plush as you want or as skimpy as you want. And really, you can put up 24 on less than an acre of land. But here's the problem. You have to have, they build them out of those containers that they get at the shipyard.
That's the way you can do it.
Some of them are over there on Camp Johnson. Go over and take a look at them. That they have cut out where, at the back where the guys are in. They have put, air conditioners in them. You go in them, they got windows in them and everything. Wrong where the,
Now, those are not
no,
living
not that
spaces.
one you talking
Yeah,
about. But,
those are temporary work areas.
yeah,
So
but the
those are
ones
not
that,
living spaces, yeah.
the ones that they built
Yeah.
are behind, what's it called? Base inspector's office.
Mhm.
And the one that we went into and we saw the guy, they had air conditioning in it, everything. They pull them in there and they work out of them as they is there.
Yeah.
Because when my husband was tax inspector, and he would go and base to find them, that's what they were living out of.
Mhm.
And it was like a little tiny house. Everything was in there. Even we got James has built one over on our church in underneath the shelter. It's got air conditioning, it's got plumbing and everything in it. Put in CD, everything. He even wired it with air conditioning. So I'm saying to myself, it don't take that much to get a person to live in a tiny house. They don't need much. They just need to come in out of the code.
There are a lot of solutions we could, get to the housing, but I think is evident of what you said. And this is just me thinking about the whole process of what we've been talking about today. I want to go back to, because this is the last year.
This is the final annual action plan from the 2018 to 2023. I do like that you all are willing to, give us that input. We can accommodate you if you all want to have more meetings so that you all as a group can strategically plan moving forward to help us, gauge that. So, that is on the table. We'll accommodate you all. And when we go out into the community, we want to see your faces the same way they see your faces here on TV. We want to see your faces at these events. We invite you, please come, because basically we would like for you all to lead those meetings as well, because you are the liaison to the community.
Let me put a comment to that, though. I'm gonna pull back out the $20
Pass it over here. This is the old 20.
It's an old 20.
They're worth a lot of money.
Well, unfortunately, this is not a silver or gold back. This is just paper backed.
Yeah, but the number on it.
The point being is, you can get all the input you want, and you come up with all the plans you want. You gotta be realistic. You gotta be realistic. There was a time in my life where I thought I would be a professional baseball player. Well, guess what? At my age, I gotta be realistic. I can go out and still hit a ball every now and then, and I can throw it, but I gotta be realistic. And what I'd say to y'all is this: as you think of the items in the action plan, you gotta be realistic. You can say in the action plan, we're going to work to solve homelessness. That's not realistic. You gotta be realistic by saying, over the next 5 years, we want to build 25 new single-family homes that are occupied by homeowners. That's realistic. And that's what I'm saying to you is, it's fine to think big. Progress is done, though, by realistic steps, not by dreams.
Well, now I have to disagree with you there, because as people see me on this screen and look at me, okay, being realistic, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair, in this building, because I would not be allowed in here. And I say that very honestly. If it hadn't been for dreamers and people who could see beyond that horizon, life would be very, very different for a person who looks like me.
I understand that.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is that in many organizations and groups that I'm in, what we do is after we talk or during some type part of the conversation, we put up one of those big Post-it things, and we call it Santa's list. And I learned from how valuable that is. And I tell people, we're getting ready to do it in an organization I'm in right now. I say, everything that you want to have happen without regard to cost or any other barriers, put it on that list. Because this is Santa Claus. Santa Claus coming to town. And I want you to have your stuff on that list. Whatever your toy or whatever your thing is, put it on there. And the first conversation that starts is, oh my God, well, how much can we, now I said, forget about that. Get that out of your head. Put it on the list. Because you never know who's coming around the corner who says, you know what, that sounds like something I'd like to put some money into. That's,
Dream.
I'm a Star Trek fan, and when I'm looking at this, is this Bezos or whatever his name is, that keeps going up into space every time you turn around? I would do that in a New York minute. I swear, I would do it in a New York minute.
Yeah, but
But
the
the
only reason why
possibility
you
of-
want to go there is because of Michael Strahan. You think he's so handsome. You want to sit
But
next
it's
to
like,
him in
he
space.
had a picture in his head of what he wanted to do, and he has the wealth to do it. There are people walking around here who are spending money that you couldn't even wrap your head around for a car, for a house, for a trinket, for a vacation that would change the lives of so many millions of people, you can't even believe it. And you have to have somebody who's thinking about the dream. You have to have your feet on the ground, but you have to keep your head in the clouds. You have to, because otherwise you can't get anywhere, because you'll always find those barriers as to why we couldn't. There was a reason why we did banking, because those people in those segregated schools wanted to make sure that young Black kids learned how to save money and how to understand the world they were coming into. And what we have, that if you don't do that, you can't go. So I agree totally with you that you have to be reasonable in terms of what I can do today or tomorrow or in 5 years. But if I'm able to come back in 100 years, I won't see the same situation going on. And I will see it if somebody's not dreaming about how we can get from here to there, you know. And like I said, there are people walking around here who I have seen it with my own eyes, where people have come in and said, oh, we did it with the grant from Kate B. Reynolds, threw it on our Santa Claus list. And we put it to them, and they said, you know, that sounds like something interesting, let's do that. And we turned that into a 3-year grant to look at the nutritional needs of children who were confined to a wheelchair. And that's what she did, and that's what we had her for 3 years. And it turned into, in North Carolina, there are 18 CDSAs, Children's Special Developmental Agencies. Her grant turned into 18 agencies located in the state of North Carolina, around the state, who address those needs for children every day. That's what we did with 3 years of Kate B. Reynolds money. And each one of those CDSAs has a person like her in it. So I know what dreaming can do if you're willing, but I also know the limitations of what you can do as well, you know. So you have to have a mix of both of those in order to get from point A to point B. But trying to figure out where it is we want to go is the biggest issue. I think even beyond how we want to get there is figure out where you want to go first, you know, or how you know.
And that's what I truly believe that if we take everything that we heard tonight and we begin to just think about it over the next couple weeks until our next meeting, come with not only your ideas, but an action plan to go with it, you know. Think about the who, what, when, where. Because a lot of times we have a good idea, but if we just take a second to write down who is going to affect, what can we do, when do we want to get done, and where is it applicable, then we can begin to really put some momentum behind it. Because that's what I think happens, that one thing can stop all the momentum from going forward, you know. Because right now we're kind of single tunnel vision on what's going on with our homeless population, but I truly believe there are other things that are happening that we're not seeing right now that we're going to see by next summer.
There's a reason people are homeless. It's not usually it's mental illness.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about,
addiction.
yeah.
I mean,
There's other
issues,
things.
but
you
I'm
know?
saying there are other issues that get you to that.
And just, I'll throw this out here, and then I think we'll go to our key dates and we'll close. When COVID-19 first happened, I was talking to my family. My sister's a nurse. I got a niece that's a nurse. We was talking. I said, hey, listen, I understand COVID-19 is out here, but there are other things that have been killing people longer than COVID-19. And about 2 months ago, we saw that like breast cancer and pancreatic cancer and colon cancer went up because no one went to get checked. And so think about that on that level. We're tunnel vision right now on one issue, but there's some other things that are going that we got to be mindful of, you know. So with that, I thank everyone who came here. Thank you, Dr. Woodruff, for your input.
Anytime.
I really appreciate you bringing that to, you know, those ideas to the forefront. That was absolutely great input. You know, I got a shed in my backyard. Hey, send them by.
I know.
You know? Yes, ma'am, you're.
I wanna ask Dr. Woodward one question though.
Mhm.
The boards here, do they ever meet with the county boards? People go over and sit in to listen what's going on within the county? We are city and county because we pay city and county tax.
We definitely pay.
So we
county
should
tax.
at least, oh yeah, I feel
Distribution
it.
too.
We should at least, I think, meet like maybe every 3 months with the county board. Cause my girl that does the food and stuff, she does a really good job and I help her out a whole lot. And the only thing I found out that's going on with the county is that when she emails me. So I'm saying a lot of the good programs that we can, piggyback off of or
Yeah.
something like this, cause when I go home to Greenville, I ask my sister and a friend of mine that's on the chairman boards up there about their Boys and Girls Club.
Now, I know you asked Dr. Woodruff about that question, but I'll say this, right? What I've done is I've kind of took it upon myself to actually call and talk to some of the county commissioners personally, because I do understand the politics of the city
Right.
and the county and how they just really won't mix because of difference of opinion, pretty much. But I think you can see it because you're
I do
a
go to the
resident.
meetings sometimes,
We
most
all
of the
can go
time.
to the meetings and we
But I'm
all can
saying-
still.
As board members, we should, participate and see what's going on with the county. A lot of us do.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing that I know of that will prevent you. You don't have to ask city council's
Exactly.
permission.
No, I go
Yeah.
to the meetings
Well, that
at
was-
times, cause we go over when we hear about certain things that horses went to the meeting.
Equine range. Yeah.
You know where I'm coming from.
But where I was headed, was this.
I gotta find out where my money is paying for.
There's absolutely nothing that would prevent you as a committee
Right,
from having a joint session with the county committee.
right.
There's nothing that will prevent you, let's say that you decide that you want to have a meeting with the Environmental and Appearance Committee.
Mhm.
You can set that up. You don't have to ask permission. Committee meetings that one advisory group wants to meet with another advisory group here in the city, you can do that on your own.
Right.
Yeah, you do have to give the notices, obviously.
Mhm.
And the same thing with the county. Any county board that you want to meet with, if they're willing to meet with you, set them up.
Set
Just
it up.
make sure you get the notices out.
Okay.
Well, I think we should.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to our chairperson and also to our city manager for, just coming, because sometimes you can really get caught up in the routine of things and time goes by so quickly. And because we meet every other month, we're talking about a maximum of 6 meetings a year. And, but once again, when you're representing the community, you want to stay on top of some of these things because, or at least be able to say, because I feel much more comfortable now, especially around this funding issue, about how when you get departments working together, they accomplish the same thing. So, but from the taxpayer's point of view or the person outside, all they see is this used to be here and now I don't see it anymore and I don't know what happened. So that was very, very useful to me. And also, and once again, like I said, having Owen here, you bring a perspective that we have got to have, because I am not gonna be sitting here with the next census. I got a feeling I might not be here. But I want you to be able to explain,
But you're gonna be on vacation, right?
That's right.
yeah,
Okay. Let's
serious,
make it clear.
real vacation.
All
Yeah.
right.
But then when the census comes back up, and it's coming, as long as we keep breathing, in 2020, you have some age on you, some experience and so on, and somebody will say to you, well, why should I fill out this form? I want you to be able to explain it to them and get them to do it because we need our money coming in here. And all kinds of other things that might happen too, so, we gotta pass the baton at some point, but,
That's right. Okay.
All right.
Once again, thank everybody.
Merry
And
Christmas
I
to you.
was gonna say, I will take that baton, and as we get ready to close out our meeting, so our key dates that we have coming up that's before you, it's not on the screen at this time, but City Hall will be closed coming up for our holiday season, so 24th, 31st for Christmas. January 17th, City Hall will be closed for Martin Luther King Day. January 20th is our next community input meeting that will take place at the Onslow Public Library at 6 p.m. So we invite all community to come out. January 29th, our homebuyer education course, that class is full already. We are in the process now of registering for our March class. February 3rd and 4th is our nonprofit development conference. It is virtual. Register today. February 5th, Money Management Seminar, which is the second part of our courses. It has been a great thing having the classes be a two-part series because we have just as many people in our money management class now as we do in our home buyer education, which runs us about 20 people per class. And then February 24th is our next community input meeting at Belfort Church of Christ with Evangelist Owens hosting it. So please pay attention to those dates, invite others. There are flyers that we'll send out as well. Ms. Whitney, I'll print some out for you so you can pass them out. And so we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting, February 28th. And I'll turn it back over to Chair.
Thank you. If there are no further business for tonight, I'd like to thank everyone. Thank you again, sir. Thank our viewing audience. And I would like to call this meeting adjourned.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We call this meeting adjourned.